Schönen guten Tag, liebe Seherinnen und Hörer des YouTube-Kanals der Zeitschrift International. Hier spricht wieder Fritz Edlinger. Ich schließe an ein Video an, das wir vor kurzem aufgenommen und auch schon publiziert haben, nämlich zum Thema Neutralität. Sie könnt euch erinnern, sicherlich, es war dieses Video, das im Wesentlichen aus einer Ansprache von Yanis Varoufakis zum Thema Neutralität sich befasst hat. Wir gehen heute einen Schritt weiter. Wir kehren zurück im Wesentlichen mit dem nächsten Video zur Ausgangs- und Eingangssituation eben dieses vorigen Videos, nämlich zu der Konferenz in Irland, die vor wenigen Tagen stattgefunden hat. Sie wurde im Wesentlichen organisiert von linken irischen Abgeordneten, vor allem von Claire Daly. Claire Daly wird auch dann in diesem Video im Wesentlichen zu Worte kommen. Sie war dort nicht nur die Organisatorin und Einladerin dieser Konferenz, sondern auch die Hauptsprecherin. Und es ist insofern wichtig, ich habe auch schon in meinem vorigen Video erwähnt, dass wir uns mit dem Thema Neutralität von Seiten der Zeitschrift International ja schon seit vielen Monaten sehr intensiv befassen, dass wir eine Zusammenarbeit haben mit Pascal Lothars, der diesen Blog Neutrality Studies ins Leben gerufen hat und der auch immer wiederum schon sowohl bei uns in der Zeitschrift als auch bei Videos zu Worte gekommen ist. Und diese irische Situation ist insofern interessant und gibt auch einen kleinen Einblick auf etwas, was ich schon in meinem vorigen Video kurz erwähnt habe, nämlich, und wir erleben auch etwas abgeschwächt, aber doch auch in Österreich. Es gibt im Wesentlichen in Europa, in der EU, gerade noch mal 3 bis 4 Staaten, die noch in welcher Weise auch immer neutral sind. Nicht in der EU, sondern in Europa, weil ja die Schweiz ja auch dazu zählt. Also es ist die Schweiz, das klassisch neutrale Land, es ist Österreich, es ist Irland und es ist Malta. Und es ist in Wirklichkeit auch Zypern, aber Zypern hat ja aufgrund der nach wie vor bestehenden Teilung der Insel eine spezielle Situation. Aber der griechische Teil von Zypern ist ebenfalls neutral. Also es sind in der EU 4 Staaten, in Europa 5 Staaten, aber in all diesen Staaten, am wenigsten noch in den beiden mediterranen, aber in den 3 mitteleuropäischen oder nordeuropäischen Staaten gibt es eine heftige Diskussion. Wir führen sie auch in Österreich. In Österreich noch am verdecktesten, weil es hier eine 70-prozentige Mehrheit der Bevölkerung gibt, die gegen jegliche Änderung des Neutralitätsstatus ist und auch die Bundesregierung sich dem im Wesentlichen angeschlossen hat. In einer Weise, die zwar nicht sehr qualifiziert war, aber doch im Wesentlichen gesagt hat, wir diskutieren nicht über die Neutralität, was natürlich eine nicht sehr demokratische Einstellung ist. Man sollte auch unserer Meinung nach, die wir sehr massiv für die Neutralität eintreten, darüber diskutieren, weil man kann natürlich nicht ignorieren, dass sich nicht seit 1955, dem Jahr, wo die österreichische Neutralität beschlossen worden ist, doch einiges in Europa und weltweit geändert hat. Und man soll sehr wohl darüber diskutieren, ob dieses Modell der Neutralität, das 1955 die Wiedererrichtung Österreichs als einheitlichen gesamten Staat ermöglicht hat, auch heute im Jahr 2023 oder 2024 noch aktuell ist. Das ist legitim. Es ist nur die Frage, was verfolgt man für Pläne? Und viele der Leute, die auch jetzt, und da komme ich wieder auf Irland zurück, die in Wirklichkeit die Neutralität an sich schlecht machen, haben ein klares politisches Ziel, nämlich à la Schweden und Finnland, den direkten Weg zur NATO zu ebnen. Und das ist etwas, was natürlich vor allem unter den Eindruck des tragischen Krieges in der Ukraine schon sehr zu hinterfragen ist, weil das würde bedeuten, dass man sich einer Kriegsallianz anschließt und irgendwelche Reedereien von Frieden und von Friedenspolitik in Wirklichkeit nur mehr, wie man in Wien so schön sagt, Larifari sind. So, in Irland, und das ist das heutige Thema, hat es eine Kommission gegeben, die von der irischen Regierung eingesetzt worden ist. Die irische Regierung, die momentane irische Regierung ist eher eine politisch rechtsgerichtete Regierung, und es wird demnächst der Bericht dieser Kommission vorgelegt werden, und es ist zu erwarten, dass von der Regierung her ein klarer Weg in Richtung weg von der irischen Neutralität hin zur NATO empfohlen werden wird. Und es gibt aber in Irland hier heftige Gegenbewegungen, und das ist das, was im Wesentlichen diese Ansprache und diese Erklärung von Clare Daly beinhaltet. Im Übrigen darf ich in dem Zusammenhang auch schon ankündigen, dass wir in Kürze ein Live-Interview als international YouTube-Kanal mit Clare Daly führen werden. Clare Daly war ja auch vor wenigen Wochen in Wien als Rednerin und Teilnehmerin dieser Ukraine-Friedenskonferenz. Und abschließend möchte ich nochmals in Erinnerung rufen, unser vor, glaube ich, knapp 2 Wochen verschickten Newsletter über die irische Neutralität. Wir haben damit einen sehr, sehr gut recherchierten Artikel eines österreichischen Politikwissenschaftlers und Historikers, der lange Zeit auch in Irland gearbeitet und gelebt hat, verschickt. Ich darf das noch einmal in Erinnerung rufen. Das ist ein Artikel, der getitelt ist: Regierung will in NATO, Doppelpunkt, Neutralitätsdebatte in Irland. Ein Überblick über Irlands Neutralitätsdebatte von Dieter Reinisch. Dieter Reinisch ist der Autor. Wer diesen Artikel noch nicht gelesen hat, der ist wärmstens empfohlen. Er ist eine ideale Ergänzung zu der Ansprache und Erklärung von Clare Daly. In diesem Sinne kann ich nur wünschen, schaut euch das an, denkt darüber nach und bezieht dann auch gleich das eine oder andere auf Diskussionen, die wir sehr wohl auch in Österreich haben, weil das ein internationaler Trend ist, im Wesentlichen als eine der Lehren aus der Ukraine, im Wesentlichen grundsätzlich die Idee einer Neutralität, das heißt eines Versuches, sich von militärischen Bündnissen fernzuhalten und möglichst bei militärischen Konflikten als Friedensstifter, als Neutraler aufzutreten, abzuschaffen. Das passt einfach nicht in das Weltbild und in den Bellizismus, der von der NATO ausgeht. Und daher wird diese Debatte noch wichtiger werden in den nächsten Wochen und Monaten, nicht zuletzt auch im Zusammenhang mit den im kommenden Jahr stattfindenden Wahlen zum Europaparlament, weil dort wird auch außenpolitisch die Frage der Neutralität eine große Rolle spielt. In diesem Sinn, ich empfehle dieses nächste Video, und ich kann aber ankündigen, wir werden uns nicht nur auf dem Videokanal bald wiedersehen, sondern wir werden sehr bald auch wiederum über die Neutralität berichten. Ein ausführlicher Bericht über die Situation Malta ist bereits in Ausarbeitung und wird sicher im Laufe der nächsten Wochen dann sowohl als Artikel als auch in Form eines Videos publiziert werden. In diesem Sinn, herzlichen Dank und bis zum nächsten Mal.
This is too bad. Now, I am really sorry for me to have to follow that lot. I'm sure ye all share my opinion that they have each and every one of them been utterly amazing and have shown two things. One, that the attack on our neutrality is not isolated. It is part of an international and European campaign of accelerated militarism, but also that our neutrality is not an embarrassment and a disgrace, but it is actually something that can be a beacon to people all over the world, and we should take great solace from that. And I think Irish people do, because actually what the last week has shown us in Micheál Martin's debacle around his con forums is that Irish people actually instinctively love neutrality. It's part of our identity. It's tied up with our independence, with our sovereignty, with our right to make independent decisions on our foreign policy, and it comes from our past as a colonised people. We understand conflict. We understand that you have to talk to people you don't like, that sometimes you have to suck it up and get on with it, but that's what you have to do to mosey on through. But of course there's a section of Irish society who have always been embarrassed to be Irish. These are the same people who years ago bent the knee to British imperialism, who bowed to US multinationals, and who now bend the knee to their European paymasters in the European Union. To them, being Irish is an embarrassment. Well, not to us, not to our president, thank God, and not to anybody else who has seen through the blatant one-sidedness of Micheál Martin's forums so eloquently outed by Loki there. Now, I think what we're going to see out of this is a lofty sort of nonsense about how, yes, we love neutrality, yes, we're Irish, we have our values, and we can have all that. Of course we're not going to join NATO. God knows, of course we'll still be neutral. But we are going to barrel down the road of further EU defence orientation. And that is being part of NATO. It is moving to a mutual defence union. It is involving spending billions on arms that could be spent on other things. So this is policy creep. This is what's coming out of that. The battle is on. And the first casualty is going to be the triple lock, because they're not going to come out and say we're going to join NATO, but they are going to look at the triple lock. We heard Dame Louise tell us that a majority of people at the forum believed that this needed reform. Well, they would, given who they were, as Loki said. Now, the triple lock is the legal mechanism upon which we can send more than 12 troops abroad. It means it requires a UN mandate, it requires the support of the government and of the Dáil. Now, the picture is painted that the UN is in chaos, it's an absolute basket case, and it's certainly true. The UN needs a lot of reform. Multilateralism is under pressure, there's no doubt about that. But it's under pressure because of great power conflict. And what did Ireland do to speak out against that since 2008 in the growing tension between Russia and the US? Absolutely nothing. We have been here before with the Cold War, but we didn't abandon the UN then. Why should we do so now? Because the game in town is all about, the veto, we're not going to be able to send our troops wherever we like. Micheál Martin told us yesterday, will there ever be a UN mission ever again? Well, actually, Micheál, last year there were 64 UN peacekeeping and renewed missions by the UN. We reaffirmed the mandate for Bosnia. And this was talked about at the forum yesterday. They said, the Russian veto could have blocked the Bosnian thing and we were all in trouble. What they didn't say was they didn't block it. The EU-led mission in Bosnia was given the go-ahead, even against the backdrop of the war in Ukraine. So the veto is not the problem. Irish troops were under every one stop from going anywhere in 65 years unbroken UN peacekeeping, and that was blocked by China over they thought the troops should go somewhere else other than Macedonia. So the veto is not a problem. Defending multilateralism is, but when they say the triple lock is not fit for purpose, What they mean is the only purpose it is not fit for is missions that do not have a UN mandate. And what are they? They are missions like Iraq, like Afghanistan, like going into the Sahel, like going into what they call rapid response, which the EU has signed up to, into non-permissive environments. That means going into countries who don't want you there. That's the only thing that the triple lock is preventing the Irish government sending troops into, because all humanitarian missions, we can do it. Even EU training missions, which I personally would object to, but they don't require the triple lock. So this is an absolute nonsense. And the European Union can call it peacekeeping. It's not peacekeeping. They are advancing their geopolitical aims in the same way that the US, China, Russia, or whatever does when it goes into Africa and all of these countries as well. Yes, there are problems with the UN, but we've got to work to overcome them. And it is striking that Micheál Martin's Forum didn't have a single representative from the Global South, from the 120 countries worldwide who are non-aligned. The countries who represent a majority of the world's population, countries like Mexico, which like us were colonised but now are independent and neutral. Why weren't they represented at the forum? Because, as the lads have said, it's a racket. It's a con. It's not about security. Nobody obviously is going to buy in to a military agenda. Who in their right mind would argue that we should be spending money on arms when we have huge housing prices, a poverty crisis, we need to deal with climate change? So they've got to convince you that there's a big baddie out there trying to get you. And if you don't be careful and you don't put the money in there, then we're all gone. It's threat inflation. These are the bagmen of the arms industry dressed up in NATO and the like. And to justify their spend, they see Russians everywhere. If you've been tuning into the forum, you would have heard it. The Irish Times tell us they have to be very careful. There might be disinformation from foreign agents around the forum. Shock, horror, there was, but they're all US and UK ones, not Russian ones. They tell you anybody who disagrees with them is a Russian spy. We're actually Kremlin agents, although, as I've said in other places, where the money goes, I don't know. They've mislaid the accounts because we haven't seen any of it. But anything Russia is threat inflated. So we hear about these Russian ships which are behaving suspiciously. They're going through international seas as they have a legal right to do. So there's a big hype about this, and then a couple of days later you see, that Russian ship actually was bad weather that forced it in there, or they were parking there to refuel because of the sanctions. They can't refuel anywhere else. And they're only one of many US, American, whatever, German, French, all the ships that go through the international seas. There's nothing suspicious about it at all. But it's the cables. It's the critical infrastructure that is going to be under attack. Wake up, people. We're in serious danger. Micheál Martin said 97% of the cables are underground, as if they were all in the Atlantic. That's worldwide, Micheál. We don't actually have a responsibility to police and mind those cables because they're all privately owned, for starters. We had, I think it was Bridget Laffan or that woman from Chatham House who said, Ireland is now an international data centre hub. We have to protect the data of private multinationals who come in here, who leech off our electricity, don't give any employment, and now we have to give up our neutrality to please them as well. Mental. These people are mental, because in the world there are 400 underseas cables, and you know what? Every year about 100 of them break down. Not because of Russian agents, but because of commercial fishing vehicles and accidental human activity or accidental weather. And I don't know if you've noticed it, but the world actually hasn't come to an end when 25% of them every year are banjacks. There are 6 of them off the coast of Ireland. That's what we're talking about. 6 private cables. And they're all spread out in such differences that the Russians couldn't take them out together if they wanted to. And if they were at the stage when they were doing that, they'd be doing a lot else as well, and we wouldn't have to worry about it. Instead, we have a European Parliament report which spreads out and spells it out that there have been no verified attacks on a cable network by Russia, China or any state group anywhere, except we're led to believe we have to ditch our neutrality because of this. We have to join NATO and work with NATO on the underground cables to protect ourselves. Well, what in God's name good would that do when the biggest actual attack on critical infrastructure, Nord Stream 2, took place in the middle of NATO heartland and nobody saw it or knows who was responsible for it? So I don't think joining NATO is going to save us with that one, with our hypothetical threats on our infrastructure. It's a nonsense. It's instilling fear. It's the same with the cyber attacks. It's threat inflation. We should have nothing to do with it. We are a small country, as Eamon de Valera said. In many ways, I feel bad about quoting him, but in fairness to him on this issue, he said all a small country can do is resist being the tool of any great power, and he was right. We are against the backdrop of great power conflict. That's what's going on. We should have no part of it. All a small country can do is argue for the upholding of international law and the peaceful resolutions of disputes. And that has served us well so far. We are unique in the European Union as a former colonised country, but yet a mature democracy. As I said, we understand conflict. We should use that for good with the other 120 countries who are also non-aligned and neutral. It's not backward. It's not isolationist. It's not embarrassing. Actually, neutrality is the most progressive form of internationalism that you can have. And it was tied up in our peacekeeping, for which we are loved universally. 72,000 men and women going on in peacekeeping missions. It's part of struggles for self-determination, for decolonialisation around the world. This is what the world and Europe needs. So we're privileged to be here. We're absolutely honoured that you've taken the time out on this sweltering day to be here. It's part of one of the many successful pro-peace, anti-war, pro-neutrality meetings which have taken place over the course of the past week. And I think we know that we are going to be on the right side of history. There are threats to our security. Absolutely they are. But they come from great power conflict, from climate change and the like, and they will only be solved by international cooperation and peace. War never benefits ordinary people, be it in Ukraine, in Russia or wherever. War, it's always the poor people who are the cannon fodder while the men in suits pocket the cash. That's what's going on here. It's a con. It's a con that's been embedded at the heart of the European Union since the Lisbon Treaty in particular, which, as Mick said, it went on in steroids. That's what we're standing against. And we stand against it knowing that we do so with the support of the majority of the citizens of Europe. The people in power have misused it on this issue, as in so many others. We represent the citizens of Europe up against the bankers, the warmongers and the vested interests that rule it. So take great solace in that and go forward. The next few weeks and months are going to be critical. We have damaged Micheál's efforts. There's no doubt about that. But the creep is on. It means you've got to take this energy, go out and make sure that there's no undermining of the triple lock. We activate now the passion that has been aroused in the past few weeks and go forward to defend our neutrality and make it a real neutrality for once, not the bastardised version that we've had to put up with. So let's go forward and do that.